Hello, everyone. David
Hello.
Morris here, publisher of Lake Drive Books, where we publish books that help you heal, grow, and discover. And today I am delighted to be joined by Christa Brown. Christa has been named as one of the top 10 religion newsmakers of 2022 by the Religious News Association. And she's worked for decades to peel back the truth about clergy sex abuse and cover-ups, especially in the nation's largest Protestant denomination, the Southern Baptist Convention. She's one of the first to go public with substantiated child molestation allegations against a Baptist minister. And she's consistently demanded reforms to make other kids and congregants safer. She's been featured in the Houston Chronicle, Vice, writes for Baptist News Global. There's an article that's out today, and has had numerous mentions in national media. Welcome, Christa. It's great to have you here talking about your new book. How are you doing today?
Thank you, David. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'd just like to, do a little informal interview here with you. There's one thing I didn't say to you before we started talking right now, but I got a test copy already of your book, and
Oh,
I've got to show it to readers, and look at the reaction on that author's face. Isn't that wonderful? Uh,
how
this is
exciting. Yeah,
this is the paperback
cool.
edition. And the book is available for pre-order if you're watching this, or maybe later on you're watching it. It's now available at retailers everywhere. And I'm excited to talk to you about this book, Christa. Um, Tell me why, maybe just as a first icebreaker question, why'd you write this book?
Oh, well, because I thought it was needed, and because I wanted to, um, as a way of peeling back my own self. And, the writing process is slow. It's kind of like yoga that way, I think. So you get to things in the process that you might not otherwise get to if you're just sitting and going about your day.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
that part of it was for me, but also because I really hope that, I mean, it's been a process of transformation for me, and I hope that something in my story will help other people in processing their own traumas, their own difficulties, and in seeing in themselves the steps that they've taken and the courage that they've had, and the progress that they've made.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
hope for that. And because it's true. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want truth. The more we expand truth in the universe, I think the more we enlarge the light that grows in the universe.
You writing books, they often say in this business is write what you know, but also write what you want to know about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that in your case, you're trying to write about truth in the universe as you've experienced it and found it. We do
Mhm.
say in the copy, uh, oh, it's not at the top of this copy. Oh yeah, truth telling has a way of snowballing. And that's how your story began, with just wanting to tell the truth.
I
So
think that's right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you've kind
I
of
mean, I
talked
just,
about why you wrote the book, and uh, a sense of purpose for yourself, a sense of purpose for others who've shared in this experiences or want to know about them. And it really is quite revealing experiences. Um, but in your own words, what's actually in the book? What does it tell? What story does it tell? What does it talk about?
well, it's a memoir, so it's about me. Um, but it's a journey about me. I think it tells about the process of becoming who we are, becoming our authentic selves. Um, Particularly, I think for people who grow up in high control religious environments, um, and that's often mirrored in high control family dynamics. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is sometimes very hard, I think, to get out of this box, the role that we are given, the role that is expected of us. You know, you try to get out of this box, you look through a little hole and you get poked in the eye. You extend a hand out of the box and you get your hand slapped down. You you try to crawl under the box and you scrape so hard your knees are bloody. It's a process. It is not easy, particularly I think for people who grow up in high control families and faith groups.
Right.
But that's kind of what it's about. And those patterns of authority and domination and control get replicated. I mean, not only with high control pastors and faith leaders, but also in relationships between husbands and wives, and older siblings and younger siblings. And I hope that people will see these patterns in what I tell of my story, um, because this story does tell a lot about a lot of really deeply personal stuff about my life.
So well said. Yeah, Lacey Crawford, one of their endorsers, she's the author of the best-selling Notes on a Silencing, a memoir. She writes, in almost fractal-like fashion, the dominance and patriarchal aggression of abusive pastors is recreated in smaller and smaller settings between husbands and wives, parents and children, older and younger siblings. She just nailed that, and that's exactly what you just said.
She
Although,
did
unless
know
you're
it.
copying her, but I don't think so. That's
No, but that absolutely does nail it. And nobody, I doubt that very many people um, set out to say, well, we're going to have an authoritarian faith group. We're going to
right,
have an authoritarian family. And yet those patterns just repeat and repeat and repeat. Um, and how do we break free from that? Um,
right. And how, so your book talks about some very difficult family life. It talks about the abuse you experienced, the pain that came with that. There's a lot of, self-questioning that goes along with that, the gaslighting that goes along with that from the
right.
community. You don't have to rehearse all that right now. I think for purposes of this video, the word transformation is in the subtitle, and there's this beautiful image of a tree on the cover.
I'm
Um,
so happy with what the work that Laura Duffy did there with that
there you
cover.
go.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. Um, what does that mean? What does transformation mean to a survivor like yourself and others?
Oh, I think it means becoming who we are, letting go. Well, I don't like the word letting go because it stays with us, but
Mm.
moving beyond these things to become who we are. And it is a process. There's nothing easy about talking about sexual abuse, or even talking adjacent or in the vicinity of sexual abuse. Um,
So,
Certainly, this has been a process for me. I remember the very first news media event I went to related to sexual abuse. I was in Austin and I was there, and I just met some SNAP people at that point, and
snap being
the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And I just kind of went along to support them at a media event they were doing outside a diocese offices there. And when the camera crew came along, I literally ducked behind a car because I could not imagine my face being shown in this context. Even if I wasn't talking about me, it was terrifying. And my point of telling that story is just, it's a process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a process. I have moved from that ducking behind the car person who wanted to be there and wanted to support others, but just couldn't in a visible way. My skin on the cover.
Right, right. This is an image of art that is actually on you.
Yes, yes.
And it very much represents not just your body, but the body and the relationship between Baptistland. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You talk about transformation in your book, about a step-by-step process. Um, I mean, I think that's just such a key thing that, like you didn't, not being boxed in, speaking truth to yourself. That's what I saw in your book, was just this ongoing voice of Christa that grew and grew and grew, and that there's a promise in that if you keep taking those steps and getting out from behind the camera. And what is that promise?
Well, truth telling holds value in and of itself. It is what makes us free. Um,
Mm.
it frees ourselves as individuals. It frees our families. It frees future generations. Um, but I mean, it's not as if any of us set out to lie to ourselves. We don't know we're doing it sometimes.
Mhm.
And so I think, which is why I think some people out there may say, well, just tell the truth. Like, just obvious, just tell the truth. But sometimes it's not so obvious, particularly when we've been raised in environments that gaslight us, as you say, that pretend that what happened didn't happen. It is sometimes very hard to sit with what is true and what isn't, what is true about me and what isn't. Um, and I think that takes a lot of kind of mindfulness and just being willing to sit in a lot of grief and pain. Um, and that's can be an uncomfortable place. And so it's easier to move past the truth and just hop right over it sometimes. And I've done that plenty myself, you know?
Yep. 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 Well, let's shift to maybe some practical questions about the book, um, more issue driven perhaps. Uh, Really quick, what is the difference between Baptistland and This Little Light, your previous book?
Well, uh, This Little Light, I think, was more of, I mean, it was also a combination memoir and expose, but leaned perhaps heavier on the expose side.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Of your explicit experience,
yes,
of as well as of your experience in trying to advocate for yourself.
yes. And in exposing up to the point in time when that book was published, what was going on in the Southern Baptist Convention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in This Little Light, I had more hope for the Southern Baptist Convention as an institution. And I think that's reflected in the book, that if people see this, that the institution will change. I don't believe that anymore. This is an institution that is just mired in duplicity and self-deception. And I just don't believe that they will not on their own, as institutionally. There are good individuals within, but institutionally
Mm-hmm.
will not on its own, for the love of God, for the love of kids, for the love of goodness and what is right, will not reform without massive outside pressure. So my own mentality has shifted in the years since This Little Light was published. And I would say Baptistland, there are expose elements to it. It certainly brings kind of into the present what has happened with the Southern Baptist Convention, which is nothing good. And but it is also for me, oh yikes, a much more I think revelatory, um, vulnerable, raw, exposed book. It tells more my upbringing, my family. I didn't talk that much about my family in This Little Light. In this book, I do, because I think it's important, because of the way that kind of upbringing set me up for everything that followed.
Mhm.
So this is a more raw book.
Yep. Yep. Very much an indictment on patriarchy in our culture. Even though I
Absolutely.
wouldn't say your father was necessarily the most heavy-handed patriarchal person, but it was the devaluing of women, I think, that you see more clearly in your book.
Yes, and of course he was raised in Baptistland too,
Yeah.
years and years ago. I mean, we all are indoctrinated.
Yep.
It's so insidious.
Yeah.
It is just so insidious, which is what makes it so difficult
Yep.
to break free.
So you talk about the Southern Baptist Convention, and it just so happens today, as we're recording this, April 2nd, 2024, you joined with three other people in an article saying the 12 things the SBC should do now to address clergy sex abuse. The other writers are David Clohessy, Dave Pittman, and Shelley Taylor. All right, there's 12 things there. What's the one thing that you would say right now that's most important that they need to knock off the top of the list?
Oh, the one thing is they need a system, an effective system of accountability for their clergy. They need a system for independently assessing the fitness of pastors. Pastors, by an independent process, are shown to have been credibly accused of sexual abuse. Oh, for the love of all that is holy, name them. Protect the people in the pews.
Publish a
Protect
list.
future kids.
Mhm.
Yes, list them. Uh, this is absolutely critical. I believe they know it's critical. There are some Southern Baptist leaders who have used that very word. This is critical. This is crucial. And yet they don't do it. And of course, there's reasons for that. They're protecting the institution. I believe that they're still very singularly focused on protecting the institution against liability risks, not only the liability risks of lawsuits brought by those sexually abused, but the liability risks of their own pastors,
Right.
um, and suing them for naming them.
Right.
But this is an institution that needs to take institutional accountability.
It's a moral issue from a moral institution.
Yes, yes.
Probably the amount of lawsuits they're getting now would actually go down if they actually created accountability, not up.
I have argued that before. Certainly, I think the number of lawsuits would go down for local individual churches if they had access to that
Right.
kind of list, that kind of a database where they could
Right.
readily see who has had serious allegations against them. So local churches would be more protected, but these honchos with
Yeah.
the big cooperative program dollars in Nashville, they're the ones who are protecting themselves. I don't see that they're actually doing diddly squat to help protect local churches.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, not, and they sure as heck aren't doing anything to protect the people in the pews.
And as a denomination, you'd think that their cause and duty is to provide a service to their congregants. And if their leadership, and if their leadership's getting sued for abuse allegations, why aren't they helping both the congregants and the leadership create a system of accountability so that it stops, for one thing, but also so that if there are issues, there's a structure in place, but now they're all left to their independent leadership structures in the different churches
Right.
and
They need
denominations.
a
All right.
structure.
I do try to keep these short. I don't mean to rush. You're going to get lots of interviews and interest on this book. So I'm glad we had this little time to talk, but so one of the things I asked you in this process is I asked you to name 4 books
Ooh,
that
yeah.
were, that you would say, if you read my book, read these books as well. And I'm trying to pull them up right now. I think you know what they are off the top of your head, but they're Jesus and John Wayne by Kristen Kobes-Dumay, Truth and Repair by Judith Herman, Disobedient Women by Sarah Stankorb, and On Repentance and Repair by, you say it, Dania Ruttenberg?
Yes, right.
Could you
Oh,
just say like a sentence about why each one is important? I know that puts you on the spot. Maybe it's challenging, but give it your best shot.
oh, all right. On Repentance and Repair by Danya Ruttenberg. Oh my gosh. Making amends in an unapologetic world. She takes on everything about this false forgiveness theology. She does it going all the way back to a 12th century Jewish philosopher. And for anyone, I mean, for anyone raised in evangelicalism where forgiveness has been so heavily weaponized, read this book.
Wow.
Read this book. Forget forgiveness, read this.
Yes.
Jesus and John Wayne. Wow, Kristen Kobes-Dumay. Didn't she do something there? The subtitle kind of tells it all. How white evangelicals corrupted a faith and fractured a nation. If you want to know what's going on right now with white evangelicals and Christian nationalism and this whole manly, manly thing that's going on, godly men running the world. Read Jesus and John Wayne. Truth and Repair by Judith Herman. Man, what a classic. She is the author of the prior book, Trauma and Recovery. And she takes on how these profound traumas that we have really derive from the harm of community. And so we also need community to step into the gap and to take accountability. It's not just the traumatic acts done by individuals. It is the whole community. And repair must be also a community effort.
Amen.
And
Amen.
then my very favorite, Disobedient Women by Sarah Stankorb. And again, the subtitle tells you how a small group of faithful women exposed abuse, brought down powerful pastors, and ignited an evangelical reckoning. Now, the reckoning still has a long way to go, but this book takes you across evangelicalism, which of course is broader than the Southern Baptist Convention, and shows how these patriarchal ways have done so much harm, and how ordinary individuals, a whole bunch of disobedient women, including me, have at least exposed it. If we haven't forced change, we have at least exposed the horror of it. Great books, all of them.
Thank you so much, Krista. All those books can be found at lakedrivebooks.com/books/Baptistland, or just Google it, you'll find it. This book is out May 7th, 2024. It should be a very exciting time for you, Krista. Are you ready?
I don't know.
We'll
see.
Your book's going to join those other four. It's been a pleasure to work with you on this too. I just want to say that and get that out on the record publicly. Thanks for believing in Lake Drive Books, and I'm wishing you well with this book.
Oh, thank you, David, and thanks to you and Lake Drive Books for believing in this book and partnering on it. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.